It's often really difficult to observe Veterans Day as someone who wants to see the empire that veterans served destroyed. It's even more difficult because, like many of you, I have family members who have served in the U.S. military and who still do. I mean, my daddy lives in a military-based town in the South, and I almost destroyed his birthday cookout pool party one year, trying to set some active duty military members from one side of the family straight about these current wars and what they're really for. It ain't freedom. Those folks don't like me to this day. And while I'm okay with that, we don't see each other that much anyway. I do realize that being an anti-imperialist does not sit well with people whose livelihoods, education, healthcare, and even housing depends on their ability to defend the empire. Now, they, of course, believe that it's their duty to defend this country, but even the contradiction that the only way they could get all the benefits they do is because they serve in the military, and how wrong that is in a supposedly free and just society, I mean, that's hard to ignore. Because if this society were actually those things, free and just, every human being would have access to those benefits as human rights. But the patriotism they're indoctrinated with won't let them see this cruel irony. And I do have to learn that maybe birthday parties and family holiday dinners aren't always the best time to educate people on those finer points of the political realities of this country, at least not on that first day. I should wait for the next day. Now, the contradictions of Black and Latinx and Indigenous Americans serving in the military to defend ideals of a country that have not extended those ideals to include them has also always been a part of our people's struggle with this country. Again, I can personally attest to this being true, as I'm proud of my grandfather for serving in the Philippines in World War II with what his military occupational specialty said. He was serving as a laundry technician, but the medals he received for bravery and the Bronze Star in that little velvet-lined box indicate to me that he did more than just wash clothes. But we don't know what he did to receive those medals because my grandfather never talked about his service other than to complain bitterly about how difficult it was for him to receive his GI benefits and how little they gave him every month when they finally did come through. And I've told you before about my Uncle Carl and his Purple Heart that we actually found out about after he died. We were cleaning out his house that had long been abandoned by his late wife since she developed Alzheimer's and had to go live with their kids. So in sifting through boxes of papers and stuff left behind by the family, we found the certificate honoring my uncle for exceptional bravery in World War II. We were shocked because he never talked about his service either, even though we knew that he did serve. What we do know about my Uncle Carl is that despite his exceptional service, he died a poor and broken man beset by alcoholism and with little except the house across the yard from my grandma's house to his name at the time of his death. And while I do have family members who have served since then, who are indeed proud of their service and will gladly talk to you about it, I am haunted by the stories I will never know about the service of people like my granddad and my Uncle Carl. Did they come back from war scarred by the horrors of it and the additional horror of trying to survive in a country that was still as racist and hateful toward them as when they left it? Even more so because they were seen as being uppity and needing to be put back in their place when they came home from fighting for someone else's freedom in another country, expecting to have freedom and equality for themselves in this one. That's actually more than possible, because that's the history of veterans of color in this country. The Equal Justice Institute says that between the end of Reconstruction and the years following World War II, thousands of Black veterans were accosted, assaulted, and attacked, and many were lynched. Black veterans died at the hands of mobs and persons acting under the color of official authority, that's law enforcement. Many survived near lynchings, and countless others suffered severe assaults and social humiliation. The disenfranchisement and dishonoring of veterans of color didn't end after World War II either. When we look at the long history of struggle for sovereignty of our indigenous relatives, we see that many who were involved in the American Indian movement were veterans of Vietnam, as were many of those involved in the Black Power and Chicano rights movements. According to the National Indian Council on Aging, American Indians and Alaska Natives serve in the armed forces at 5 times the national average and have served with distinction in every major conflict for over 200 years. But indigenous communities in the U.S. continue to be at the absolute bottom of poverty levels, and this is true practically throughout North America, with high rates of unemployment and stress-related diseases, as well as suffering an epidemic of murdered and missing indigenous women and an astronomical rate of extrajudicial killings by the police. Latinx and Black communities are also right in the same neighborhood with those same issues. For people in oppressed communities of color who believed that serving in the military would prove their allegiance to and love for this country, when they realized that their service was not respected and did not equate to the equality and justice and inclusion that they sought, it isn't a surprise that the disillusionment they felt led many to see the empire they sought acceptance from for what it is: a white supremacist, capitalist, and imperialist system that uses true freedom fighters as fodder to expand the empire and oppress indigenous, Latinx, Black, and poor people around the world. And those true patriots, those actual freedom-loving foot soldiers, fill the ranks of revolutionary and radical anti-imperialist movements in the 60s and 70s in this country that people like me revere and continue to carry the banner for today. So while I recognize the contribution of our fellow working class, poor, and oppressed brothers and sisters as they believed that they were participating in upholding and expanding democracy with their military service, I also recognize those who realized that they actually were just pawns in the empire's game and came home to fight the real war for freedom and justice for the people, but this time clothed in the uniform of revolution. People like Leonard Peltier and Marshal Eddie Conway and Glenn Ford and Ajamu Baraka, and even those who are veterans of this war for our liberation, like Sister Assata Shakur and Brother Jalil Muntakim, and all the political prisoners of that war who continue to fight for us, even behind the walls. Thank you, revolutionary freedom fighters, for your service. Follow Lukman Nation on patreon.com/LukmanNation for lots of great content.